Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, I want to talk about what United might be looking to do for the short and long term in the midfield and go over 5 players that they could look to sign. Now, these of course are not the 5 only players that they could look to sign. There are more. Certainly on their lists, there are more people that they would like to bring in. There are more names, there are more options, and this is far from the be-all end-all. It is only October 24th. A lot of these processes obviously start early on and continue throughout the year. And that's one important thing I want to make a note in terms of this transfer business and how things operate. Even before Ineos, even before a competent management structure, transfer work goes on all year. And so when you have people will say, oh, there's no chance they're looking at doing deals, this and that. They are. They always are. The business for next summer starts last summer. Everything is continuing throughout the year. So at this point in time, they're going to be watching players, looking for opportunities and things like that. It is a different business than it has been. And especially under Ineos now when they're doing transfers and when they're operating under, in this area, a very forward-thinking and competent structure. Don't comment to me about the manager situation with that. I understand. But when it comes to all of this business, they've been very forward-thinking. One of the things, obviously, that was confirmed today from the mouth of Sofyan Amrabat himself is the news that I brought throughout the summer of wanting to keep McTominay and bring back Amrabat was the plan for Erik ten Hag. Amrabat confirmed that himself, but Jason Wilcox, who was essentially running most of our transfer business leading up to and through summer, had other ideas in mind. Now, there are 2 important parts to this. Number 1, I know what I'm talking about. Number 2, the transfer business that United do will be done if they see it go beyond just a manager's thoughts, as opposed to how it's been done before. And just because a manager wants to use players, and McTominay was a very important player for Erik ten Hag last season, and Amrabat was at the end, and ten Hag wanted him to use him regularly in the way that he used him by the end of the season, as we saw when we started the year, right? We set up in a very similar way to how we ended the season. And if Amrabat was still at the club, he would likely have been playing in those positions. Ten Hag wanted him. Ten Hag wanted him very much and wanted to use him heavily. But that doesn't mean United won't press ahead with their long-term plans. When it comes to transfers and signings, they're going to move players if and when they feel there's a good opportunity to move them on if they are not a part of the long-term plans. And they're going to use that opportunity to bring in players they think are a part of the long-term plans and that they want for the long-term plans. So if the opportunity arises for Eriksen to leave in January and it would allow them to get someone, one of these names perhaps, that they want to bring in January, then they will do it. And anyway, that is information. That is the reality of it. If that opportunity arises, if Eriksen wants to leave as well, there's 3 parties that have to be involved in this. Actually, there's 4, right? Because there's the buying club. There's a lot of parties that have to be involved in this, come to think of it. Maybe it's 5. Either way, you have what club would be interested in an Eriksen or a Casemiro. You have the player themselves interested in doing it. You have United. Then you have who United would want, whether they're interested in coming, and whether the club that is selling them are interested in moving them on. If an opportunity arises that could work, then United will move for whatever business they could. That's why at the end of last summer, you never got these like business is done briefs like you have in years past, because they were open throughout to the last second. If the long-term moves that they want to make are there, they'll do them. And that's the view for January, and that'll be the view for next summer as well. So business could absolutely happen. Will it? Remains to be seen. Similar to how Ten Hag would have wanted Scott McTominay and Amrabat to come back, and there was a lot of kind of talk around Amrabat coming back. Just because something may be looked at doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's a lot of people involved in these decisions, and there's a lot of factors into whether these things happen. So it's just important to note. The other thing is that obviously this is not going to be the club line that they want to move on Casemiro and Eriksen, because these are players who are playing right now. But just because you're playing right now, or you're important at the moment, in a temporary basis to the manager, doesn't mean you're part of the long-term plans. And obviously they know they're not, but you don't want to be unsettling players during the season. So you're not going to be getting a bunch of briefs. They want to sell Eriksson, they want to sell Casemiro in January, or none of that. So people who are reliant on those briefs for information are going to sit there and say, none of this is true, but it is. United are looking at long-term plans. They're looking at the things that they want to do for the long term to rebuild the squad. So let's get into the 5 players that could fit into this, and 5 players that they do have an interest in. And we will start with one who has been getting a lot of more talk recently, and you got some confirmation from reports out of ESPN South America about this. He was being chased heavily as well by Real Madrid, who moved on from him, just didn't spend the money there, and that is Franco Mastantuono. United have been watching him, I believe, over a year now, but it was April last year that it first brought his name up as somebody United would be interested in. A couple important notes to keep in mind here: Franco Mastantuono is left-footed. So he operates, it says right wing, but when you watch and kind of look at where he's playing, he tends to operate in more of like the right-sided attacking midfielder area. And that's important to note because there's a lot of similarities between the first 3 targets. He operates more in the maybe the attacking half, attacking midfield position off of the right side, utilizing that left foot. Strong, very athletic, good physical player. He has a lot of development to go as a player, but you can kind of see where he is, where he plays, and what he does for the most part. Let's see, similar, in the different competitions that he plays in. But yeah, sometimes maybe he does operate as a right winger, but more often than not, it's in this sort of attacking mid position. And, it's hard to find a lot of data on some of these younger players, especially the ones who are in South America at this point in time. We can see he's a good creative player, 2 assists, 1.62 expected assists, good passer of the ball, and he's playing mostly substitution minutes at this point in time, so he's not someone who's been fully established, every game. If we go to his game log here, 24 minutes, 38 minutes, 34 minutes, 14 minutes, 33 minutes. So not someone who is, as of yet, totally established as like a nailed-on starter. But overall, statistically, compared to attacking midfielders and wingers, you can see very creative. He's really good. He's a good dribbler. He's a good passer. He's definitely probably the more attacking option of all of these midfielders that we're going to look at. So you think somebody who could potentially replace like a Christian Eriksen, somebody who could rotate with Bruno Fernandes, for instance, where, if you were in a game state where you wanted to play like currently Bruno and Eriksen, you could play a player like this as your kind of attacking 8s, 10s with a 6 behind him, or you could play him as a sole operating 10, or you could even play him if you went with a little bit more of a 4-4-2 type of thing, as like we've put Bruno out wide right. You could play him in that right wing position too. So maybe more like, I'm not saying he's like Bernardo Silva, but in the way that Bernardo Silva has been deployed as a winger, a 10, an 8 in different positions off of that, usually off the right side, you would think something similar with Mastantuono. So that's one name that United are looking at, that they're interested in. Obviously, he would be available for less than his release clause, which I think is pretty significant. But it was reported a while back, and I believe to be true, that it would be less than his release clause. He also has a European passport, so no issues there. But he's not 18 yet, so I'm not sure if he can be signed in January. He will turn 18 this August. But he does have a European passport. I don't totally understand all the Brexit rules still, so it could be, buy, loan back. Again, their seasons run differently anyway, so you could see something like that, or it could just be something for the summer to come in later. The next name to mention that's a little more close to home is Chris Rigg, player at Sunderland. Again, I just want to note, left-footed, okay? Obviously, there's quite a number of the players United are looking at that are left-footed. When you look at our team, it lacks a lot of left-footers, right? We were looking to add more left-footers in the center back position with Gerard Braithwaite this summer. We didn't. We're playing 2 right-footers on the fullbacks because our left right-footed left back isn't healthy. We have no left foots in the midfield since Fred left, since Matic left. And we have we do have two wingers in Ahmad and Anthony, but only one convinces really. So there is a lack of balance there where a left-footed player with some natural passing angles might be a good thing to add to the squad. And I think that's a good part of this as well. Now, these heights that are being listed here for both Mastantuono, I think these are still growing players and are expected, based on their physical profiles, to be probably a bit taller than this. I would guess that both Chris Rigg and Mastantuono are taller than the listed heights here already by now, maybe closer to 6 foot, 6'1", and could have some size to them. Very physical players. Just bearing that in mind. So Chris Rigg is another one that's interesting. Again, you can see kind of operates in a similar zone, forward off of the right side in that midfield. He's got he's a little, obviously a bit more nailed on as a starter. 3 goals. Not as much of a passer, not as much of a creator, I guess I should say, as Mastantuono might be. So a little bit of a different profile in them, but both operating in similar areas, both exciting young players that you can look at, that United have been looking at. And against midfielders, Chris Rigg shows up as a good goal scorer, a very good carrier of the ball. His passing stats versus other midfielders is a bit low. He just isn't making that many passes per game. When you compare him to attacking wingers, it's still pretty low. So some of that might just be stylistically with Sunderland, but defensively, not a lot there as a midfielder. So again, maybe a little bit more of a forward, but again, it's some of that could genuinely be down to just the style that Sunderland play and all of that. Important to note, he's been deployed more as like an actual right mid rather than in the midfield. So again, stylistic differences in terms of how the teams play. When you're comparing some of these younger players, that makes it hard because you don't have all the same statistics available. But both very talented players who have some similarities, good athletic physical profiles, players though who can absolutely be in the midfield. Next one to discuss is Nypan. Now we know that there's been discussions over Nypan already. United played against Rosenborg in the preseason. I've told you there were talks about him. There's interest in him. Other people have too. It's been plenty covered as well. And there is interest in him. I think if he were to join as somebody in January, he would probably be loaned back. Now he's going to turn 18 before January, so he can come in. But there were some indications that he might want to stay a little bit longer. But things can change, and he might be ready or willing to take a step up. Now, he operates on a bit more of the left side. He is very much a midfielder, though, I would say, in terms of an attacking, aggressive midfielder, but definitely a midfielder. He has really good size. When we saw him in preseason, I was very impressed with him. I'm not always impressed with some of the names that we hear, and then we watch him, and I'm like, this guy's not that good. I was really impressed with him physically. He seemed up to the task. He seemed ready. He seemed very, very good. And, he's a good goal scorer. 7 goals, 6 assists in this season. This is a good player. This is a good player. And somebody who, people who watch him are really impressed with him. Now, he may not be ready. As with all of these players, they may not be ready. But good numbers. I mean, nearly a goal and assist every 100 minutes. Goal or assist every 100 minutes is a very good output for a player being deployed as a midfielder. So, again, on balance, different. And this would be his second full season as a senior in this league in Norway. So you can see the numbers improving year over year and improving upon his passing, assists, all of that. So a good player. They don't have the same kind of comparisons here, but an interesting one. Not as many stats you can find on this league, unfortunately, but someone to watch. Now, an interesting thing that I found here, let me see. This is on FOTMob. Is this, he's right-footed, but I kind of remember him being someone considered to have a strong left foot. Of his shots, 23 right foot 18 left foot. So probably quite ambipedal, you know, two-footed, right? As a player, someone who can take who's good with both feet. Usually if someone is taking that many shots with either foot, you know, you could expect them to be pretty strong on that. You know, these would be his ratings, let's say per 90 against the other players. Really a strong goal scorer, a very strong passer, creator as well. You can see by the pass accuracy and all of that, again, probably more of somebody making a lot of creative passes. So I find him, Rigg, and Mastantuono to be of a similar profile. They're all good dribblers, very good on the ball, creative players, creative passers, goal scorers, you know, that you want closer to the goal. So you can see, I mean, by this kind of rate, are good at everything, but these are not defensive midfielders, right? These are definitely like maybe your 10s, even sometimes a winger for you, that you want to bring in, that kind of profile. So that's what I see about those. Then I want to move on to two other players that are a bit of a different one, which is one, Adam Wharton. Not going to be a surprise to anybody what type of player he is. Everybody knows now. He's very, very hyped up. Has come to the Premier League. A bit of a tough season so far at Crystal Palace, I would say, performance-wise, but that team as a whole is performing quite poorly. It was also stated by Glasner that he probably needs surgery and he's having an injury. That being said, we know he's like a deep midfielder. You could pair him with Kobbie Mainoo. You could bench Kobbie Mainoo for him. He'd be in that kind of position, dictating play from deeper. A really, really good passer of the ball. Someone who breaks the lines really well. We have a little bit more in terms of stats here. He's again left-footed, but also big. Big physically. He's tall. He's growing. I think he's surely taller than 6 foot now, maybe 6'1", 6'2". Definitely seems quite tall when you see him. But you know, not going to be a goal scorer. Going to sit a bit deeper. Very, very good progressive passing through the lines from deep, even on lower volume. He's going to be doing that. And defensively doing a lot of work there as well. So this would be a bit more of like a Casemiro replacement, someone who can, not saying he's the same profile as Casemiro, but someone that could play deeper, you know, with Ugarte or with Kobbie, and you get different options there. You probably wouldn't play him as a sole holding midfielder. Not that I think we should be doing that with anybody we have, frankly, but you know, a good partner for some other players. That's my opinion on him from watching, but you know, we want to see how he develops. I don't think this one has any chance of a January move. He needs to have a bit of a better season. Maybe he needs that surgery and see how he does and see if Crystal Palace can improve on this year so we get a better measure of what kind of player he is after taking a step up to the Premier League. But Crystal Palace are very, very good at spotting talents. A lot of people have watched him. You know, it's been a tough start for them, but I think he's a very, very good player. And the last one I want to mention for this video, could he come in January? Sure, if United were up for it. And again, this would be somebody very, very much, if Casemiro were to leave, you'd want to bring somebody like him in. This is Hayden Hackney, and basically Michael Carrick's protege at Middlesbrough. That's how he plays. That's how he is. We've talked about him before. All over the place, around the middle of the pitch. I mean, dictating play, moving it around. Very, very Carrick-like in how he plays. An amazing passer of the ball. Can do a lot with it. Good defensive work as well. But, you know, somebody who can very much dictate play from deep. And, again, would be a good partner for Kobbie Mainoo or to play next to Emmanuel Ugarte. So another option to give you a mix in that deep two. I can't remember if he's, let me see if it says if he's, now it's bothering me. He's left-footed as well. So again, another left-footed player. And I have found that theme that they're looking at a lot of players who are left-footed and who are at least good with the left foot to bring some balance into the team. So you could see them matching up well with Ugarte or moving Kobbie Mainoo around. Again, I mean, just an incredible passer, very good dribbling, very good on the ball as well, but an amazing passer of the ball. You know, he's got a goal in him and all of that too, but just fantastic player, dictator, dictator of play in the Carrick mold. So this is one that would be really interesting. My biggest concern with him, and I could understand this being a concern, is his height. He is smaller compared to the other players. I think he probably has the smallest physical frame, but he's played a lot of games in the championship now. It's a physical league. He seems to stand up to it well, but we do lack a little bit of height, and I would be a little concerned about that on its own. Again, I wouldn't call him an attacking midfielder at all, but an all-rounder. So it depends as well with someone like him, how you want to play. Are you going to play all around, keep a partnership or a flat three? Then someone like Hayden Hackney is really, really good in there. If you're trying to play a pivot with 2 at 8s, I don't think he's even close to the guy. But again, a really, really, really a profile we're lacking, a player who can dictate the passing game from deep, who is very solid on the ball, but who can make the great passes through the lines. Both him and Adam Wharton, I say, are 2 players that can do that from deep, that give us something we maybe lack from deep. Really moving the ball, even though they're a bit different, but moving the ball from deep in those progressive angles. So these are 5 players that I think are very interesting to look at. Franco Mastantuono, Chris Rigg, Nypan, Adam Wharton, and Hayden Hackney. And again, I'm not saying that on my opinion. I do think they're all good players from the little bit I've been able to research on some more than others, because very hard to say you've watched a lot of any of especially the ones like Nypan and Mastantuono. It's a lot harder to get their games. We've seen a lot of Adam Wharton. I'm sure many of us have watched a lot of Chris Rigg, as well as Hayden Hackney at Middlesbrough. If you watch, you've been following Carrick at all as well there. So 5 players that United are interested in on the younger side, right? These are all young players. Hackney is, I think, the oldest at 22, but otherwise Mastantuono 17, not yet 18. Chris Rigg, 17, not yet 18. Nypan, 17. Adam Wharton, 20. So young players. And again, following the theme that they want to build the team out with under 25s for the most part. And so again, when you look at overall plans in the long term, the idea is to replace Casemiro and Eriksen. We know that. They could have gone last season. They could go next summer. If there's an opportunity for them to move on in January, that they want as well. If Saudi comes in and is like, oh yeah, we'll take Casemiro off your hands, United aren't going to sit there and say, you know what? We really need him for the 6 months of the season where we're not winning anything. So we're going to blow the opportunity to get 20 million and get 350K off the books. They're not going to say no to that if that opportunity comes along. That's the way they're operating now. We're not in a league title charge at all. It's developmental, and we're building for 3 years in the future. Turning it down would be ridiculous. If someone came in for Eriksen, now remember, Eriksen's also free to sign a contract in January, so he may not take a transfer, but he's free to sign a contract in January to go anywhere in the summer outside of England. He's free to sign a pre-contract because he will be a free agent. So regardless, we ideally aren't spending the second half of our season building our team around them, right? Once players are coming back and healthy, they should see less games just naturally because we're not building for the future with them. So again, if there's opportunities, they will take them. It would be the same thing if someone came in for a 30 million offer for 40 million for Harry Maguire out of the blue, and they could go get a center back, they would do it. That's the thing. They would do it if that were to happen. If someone came up with money for Luke Shaw or Malacia and helped them get a left back, they're going to do it. This is the way that they're going to operate right now because it's all about building for the future and the long-term view. So these are players that are being looked at. These are plans that are being thought of, and we will see what happens. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share this morning that I thought would be morning for me, that I thought would be interesting. Given some of the names that I've talked about recently, and just to think about ahead of January and whatever. It's very early, but I love to look at this and then see, come January if we make a move. If not, look at it again in February, March, and see how our plans start to develop, because they do, and they change over time. And obviously, the performance of all these players, as well as performance of other young players that they're going to be surely watching, will be changing and evolving on their radar of what they want to do. So But definitely an area of focus is getting at least 1 or 2 more midfielders in between the next 2 windows. So ideally, they would love to do that. Okay, well, I hope you found this interesting and informative. Appreciate you watching. And thank you. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next video.